Hello and welcome to part 4 of my Saw VII Rewrite. In the description to this video, you will find a link to part 4, as well as links to parts 1 through 3 if you are not up to date. The rest of this video will be me discussing what happens in part 4. But before diving into that, I need to yet again give thanks to Luke Headland, who is the artist responsible for the poster you see in this video's thumbnail. Like all of Luke's art that I feature in this series of videos, he designed this independently of me and this project, but I thought it was a perfect fit for my version of Saw 7. And I was lucky enough that Luke was agreeable to letting me use it. We still have a few more videos in which I will show you more of Luke's work, but even that will just be scratching the surface. If you would like to see a larger catalog of Luke's art, I highly encourage you to use the links in the description to this video, where you can find exactly that. In Saw 3, we see John criticize Amanda for what she has done to Adam, Eric, and others. He even mentions that she took away their only chances. And I think from that, we can infer that John leaving Adam in the bathroom at the end of the original movie was not him trying to condemn Adam to die in there. The truth is, Adam actually had multiple ways to escape from that chain in that room, one of which John himself mentions in my script, that being that he could use Zepp's gun, which he tried to fire at John, to shoot the chain. It does seem that the gun may have flung out of Adam's reach when he was electrocuted, but he has a variety of things, including his clothes and Zepp's clothes, to, reach out and rope that back in. This may have been fairly difficult in the dark, and it may have taken a while, but it's almost certain he could have eventually gotten it. Another way he could have escaped was demonstrated by Eric Matthews at the beginning of Saw 3. Once again, this may have been a bit more difficult for Adam in the dark, because he didn't have a flashlight like Eric did. But realistically, he wouldn't need a light to do what Eric did. Another option is the shard of two-way mirror glass that Adam had. He could have used that to slice through his muscles and tendons and gotten his foot out that way. But ideally, the gun option would have occurred to him, as that was by far the least gruesome option. And so when Amanda went and did what she did, she may have viewed it as mercy, but in John's eyes, she was taking away his very real chance at surviving. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that this script regards the director's cuts of the previous 6 films as canon. I maybe should have mentioned that in part 2 when I talked about Saw 6's post-credit scene, which only exists in the director's cut. Obviously, I regard that post-credit scene as canon, as it is actually a factor in my script. The reason I bring that up now is because in the theatrical version of Saw 3, it's not well established that John knew what Amanda went and did to Adam. Whereas in the director's cut, we actually see that she has a nightmare that is caused by guilt. And when she wakes up from that nightmare, that's when she grabs her jacket and goes to the bathroom. Not the bathroom, the bathroom. And as she walks past John in bed, we see his eyes open and he watches her go. That shot of him opening his eyes actually is in the montage at the end of Saw 3, but without seeing the director's cut, you don't even know what it is you're seeing. Now, outside of Saw 3 and Saw 6, the differences between the director's cuts and the theatrical cuts of the other 4 films are, for the most part, pretty superficial. But in the cases of Saw 3 and Saw 6, there actually are a couple of crucial differences that do play a factor in my script. So I'm hoping most of you are familiar with the director's cuts of at least those two movies. The thing that's tricky about that is that, okay, so like I own like this collection on Blu-ray, which for a long time was the only Blu-ray version that you could get of any of the Saw films. That may or may not still be the case. It's been a while since I checked. But the versions of the first 6 films that are on here, that are in here, are each the director's cut versions, with the exception of Saw 3. The last I checked, the only version available in the US at least of the Saw 3 director's cut is the DVD version. And again, I do think that that's pretty unfortunate because in this case, and in the case of Saw 6, I do think that this is the superior version. And there is another scene in Part 6 that specifically references something that's on screen in this, but not in the theatrical version. I will obviously address that in the video for Part 6. Anyways, for now, I just wanted to make it clear for anyone that may not have ever seen the director's cut that it is established that John knew that Amanda went to the bathroom and suffocated Adam. The fact that Hoffman is present when Lawrence wakes up in the hospital, I think that's a big reason that in that moment, Lawrence doesn't rat John out. Hopefully it's clear by Lawrence's behavior in that scene that at this point he is aware of Hoffman's involvement. And so having him looming over you while you're being asked who did this, and being completely unable to predict how he might react if you were to tell the truth, it makes sense that Lawrence would bite his tongue. And then after that, once he's reunited with his family and he finds that a lot of what John said about appreciating them and, now they're happier than ever, I think that's where Lawrence starts to become more conflicted and starts to genuinely consider that what they went through might have been a blessing in the big picture. And so by the time John comes to him again months later, that's where Lawrence is open to taking part in this work. At a certain stage of writing this script, I was very concerned that people would be critical of the fact that there weren't enough traps. And for a while, I actually had intended to show more of the setup of the nerve gas house and showing some of the traps that the characters in that game never came upon. And in those scenes, you would have heard the tapes that had been recorded for them, as well as seen John's imagining of how those games would play out. I had 2 of those pretty fleshed out, one of which was Jonas's, which would have been in the master bedroom. And his game was actually the reason why there's a box of razor blades in that room when Amanda goes in there. But by the point that I was actually sitting down to write all of those, the script was already getting kind of insanely long. And story-wise, including those sequences would have served absolutely no purpose. Including them would have been purely motivated by me trying to satisfy some imaginary trap quota. But because I did want to show Lawrence and John working together to set up this house, and because I had already written her tape, I did leave in the part where you hear Addison's tape explaining the razor box. I am aware that behind the scenes, members of the crew, I want to say the director, Darren Lynn Bousman, but I don't remember 100% for sure that it was him. But I am aware that it has been said that in their mind, that trap was intended for Gus. But because that was never canonically established in the context of the movies, and I did feel like that trap could be made to be fitting for Addison in the Jigsaw type of way, I went ahead with my interpretation of what that game was supposed to be and who it was supposed to be for. After the reveal of Saw 6 that Amanda was partially responsible for Gideon's death, I thought that recontextualized what Amanda goes through in Saw 2 in an abandoned nursery. And in the scene where she and Hoffman are setting up that room, we see the start of her insecurities, which grow into what we see in Saw 3, and which ultimately leads to her downfall. I think the guilt that Amanda felt over Gideon very much made her feel like a murderer. And after what she did to Adam, the first part of which was at Hoffman's behest, and the second part being her attempt at alleviating her guilt over that. But after she did those things to Adam, she starts to feel that maybe she isn't so changed after all. She was a murderer before her Jigsaw game, and now she is still a murderer. And this is where her faith in what they're doing starts to shake, and where she first turns to self-harm. As we see in this script, John condemns the self-harm, and that's why in Saw 3, it's shown that Amanda has started doing that in places where John can't see. In the final montage of Saw 2, there's this really quick clip of Amanda in the bathroom with Daniel that I always found kind of interesting, where she looks towards the wall with the mirrors, and we know that she must have given Daniel his antidote fairly quickly after Xavier was killed, but we also know that it was not the antidote in the safe that she gave him, because when Eric arrives at the house, we see that the safe is open and there is a syringe on the floor, but it's still full. So I really liked the idea that Amanda steered Daniel down to the bathroom, specifically because that's where his antidote was. Now we come to the trap that I referenced back in part 1. The trap that I wrote over 2.5 years ago and felt was quite different from anything we'd seen in Saw before. But as I alluded to in part 1, when the trailer for Saw X came out a few months ago, I don't think I noticed it on the first watch, but when I showed it to somebody else and I watched it again, there's a very quick shot of the device in Saw X starting to pour blood, and then a quick shot of it landing on someone's face. And I immediately was like, that's exactly what I pictured for the alcoholboarding trap. Obviously, it's blood instead of alcohol, but those quick shots from the trailer looked exactly like what I saw in my head. Obviously, now having seen Saw X, there are obviously other differences, but still, the idea of somebody being not waterboarded, but boarded by something else, some other type of liquid. Suddenly, my trap isn't so original anymore. And so with that and the tongue trap at the beginning, which was also written before Spiral, basically it was becoming clear that I needed to finish this fucking thing and get it out. Because the more Saw films that come out before I release my script, the less original my traps are becoming. I think that's everything that I have for part 4. If you guys have any feedback or questions, please do comment those below. Once again, if you're watching this once the future episodes have been released, I just ask that you not say anything in the comment section to this video regarding anything that occurs after part 4. But I hope you guys come back for part 5.
Hello there. If you'd like to be notified when more videos like this one arrive, just click the circle to subscribe. In the meantime, you can click either of the 2 boxes to check out other content from this channel. Or don't. The choice is yours.